Good morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. here in Eagle Pass, Texas. I'm Jose Diaz-Balart with a special report from the U.S.-Mexico border. We are just 1 hour away from the start of a court hearing that could have a huge impact on Eagle Pass and so many other border communities. A federal judge is going to be hearing arguments on a lawsuit brought by a number of Republican-led states to stop the Biden administration from lifting pandemic-related border restrictions known as Title 42 on the 23rd of May. That's 10 days from today. Republicans and some Democrats have criticized plans to lift Title 42, which has been used to expel more than 1.8 million migrants from the U.S. since the start of the pandemic. They worry border communities could be overwhelmed by tens of thousands of migrants waiting in camps like this one that you see here in Mexico for the opportunity to cross into the U.S. and seek asylum. All of this, as it plays out here, the Coast Guard is searching for migrants missing after a boat capsized near an island between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic yesterday. At least 11 people are dead. 31 others were rescued. The Coast Guard says the boat carrying mostly Haitian migrants had left from the Dominican Republic. And we just can't forget, this is a story about people. People who risk their lives, who are willing to risk everything to make the long and often dangerous trek to the U.S. I want to warn you, the video we're about to show you is disturbing. It's the moment that we saw officials recovered the body of a man who died trying to get to the United States. He died crossing the river. We have seen 2 bodies being recovered from the river, and that's just in the time we have been here. It's always, always dangerous and many times a deadly reality. Last night at a migrant shelter, I met a Venezuelan family, father, mother, 5-year-old son, 2-year-old daughter. They just arrived after a 32-day journey, which took them through the Darien jungle and into Mexico.
Entonces, pues, tomamos la decisión de arriesgarnos con nuestros hijos por la selva del Darién. Una selva muy dura, muy difícil. Hoy por hoy, después de mi experiencia con mis hijos, que me dolió bastante, a pesar de que yo fui el que tomé la decisión de pasarlo por acá. Entiendo a las personas que dicen, no pasen por acá, no pasen por acá. Antes pensaba que era algo de pronto de envidia o de pronto ese egoísmo, que la gente no quisiera que uno pasara. Pero ya yo teniendo la vivencia de esas personas muertas que habían, de esas tumbas que hay de barro, porque hay tumbas de barro, de ver cuerpos en descomposición, entonces ya puedo entender realmente por qué las personas dicen no.
And with us now here in Eagle Pass, NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, it's great to see you. Just how concerned are people here about the lifting of Title 42? And then this happens at a time, Gabe, where there is a constant flow of people crossing this river, trying to get to a new life in the United States.
Yeah, that's right, Jose. You know, we've been speaking with people here over the last few days, you know, and even some Democrats here in this border community and others who do not want to see Title 42 lifted because they have concerns that there's going to be this constant, even bigger flow of migrants if Title 42 is lifted. And of course, as you were discussing, Jose, now Republicans trying to make this a major issue going into this election year, and it could come to a head later today in that Louisiana courtroom where a federal judge is set to listen to arguments on whether the Biden administration can lift Title 42, a policy that former President Trump used to keep migrants out.
With border crossings already at their highest level in decades, this morning the Biden administration is facing growing concerns. The surge could grow even larger.
There's bigger groups here, especially Cubans, Haitians that are still coming through this area.
In March, Customs and Border Protection reported more than 221,000 crossings, the highest in more than 20 years. Texas has launched a controversial multi-billion-dollar effort to crack down, prosecuting some migrants without children for trespassing.
This is something you see day in, day out, really around the clock.
This is just nonstop, yeah.
Over Eagle Pass, Texas, we ride along with troopers from the Texas Department of Public Safety and see migrants wading across the Rio Grande, some holding children. One group includes more than 100 people, many from Cuba.
The influx is constant, but local authorities we spoke with say that if Title 42 is lifted, this surge will be even worse.
Title 42 is a public health policy that the Trump administration used during the pandemic to expel migrants. The Biden administration now wants to end it, saying it denies asylum seekers their rights. But 21 Republican attorneys general have sued, arguing lifting Title 42 would attract even more migrants. Even some Democrats are against lifting it, especially in an election year.
Title 42 needs to remain as is. You know, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the facilities.
But Joanna from Ecuador, who's pregnant, says she could not wait.
Why did you come here to the United States? ¿Por qué viniste a los Estados Unidos?
I want to work, she says, describing how a gang back home threatened her. She and so many others risking their lives to come to the U.S. as a legal battle that could ultimately determine their fate plays out in court.
And Jose, the Department of Homeland Security says that it expects up to 18,000 migrants a day to cross into the U.S. border if Title 42 is lifted.
Thousands of people from countries like Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, who survived a dangerous and long journey across multiple countries. The violent Darién jungle and the treacherous waters of the Rio Grande are now caught in the middle of a political drama over immigration. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is taking credit for sending almost 50, mostly Venezuelan migrants and asylum seekers, the youngest 3 years old, to Martha's Vineyard.
Bajen del hotel, 50 personas y nos vamos. Nos montamos una camioneta, nos llevó al aeropuerto, un avión y nos trajo hasta acá.
¿Te duele?
Pues la verdad no mucho, porque en vez de hacerme una maldad lo que hicieron fue hacerme un favor en realidad y pues no me quejo.
Salimos con esos documentos desde el Departamento de Migración. Nosotros no estamos indocumentados en este país, nos pasamos irregularmente.
More Venezuelans have left their country towards other countries than the entire population of Denmark and Luxembourg combined. Cristina, what's going on? Why Venezuela and why now?
Well, they're saying they're fleeing a dictatorship, the Maduro regime. There's nothing there. They're being persecuted. And that's one of the most important points that these migrants were making to me, and the one thing that they're actually angry about. They're being called illegals. They're not. They came to the border. They turned themselves in. They're asylum seekers. They want relief from this country, and they want to be treated as such.
The DHS officials that I've spoken to have said that there has been plans within the administration to actually take migrants either by bus or by plane from the southern border into the interior of the United States. But their plan is very different, and that they would actually give these cities a heads up, work with federal partners, work with local shelters to be able to take them in, provide for people until they can go meet up with a family member or someone who can take care of them until they're ready to work and see an immigration judge.
Good morning. It's 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. here in El Paso, Texas. I'm Jose Diaz-Balart. We're coming to you from the U.S.-Mexico border, the front line of the migrant humanitarian crisis. And let me just give you a quick area where we are. This is Texas, right across the Rio Grande. Here is New Mexico, and right across that wall is Mexico. That's the Museo del Adobe on the Mexican side. El Paso's mayor says roughly 1,800 to 2,000 migrants arrive here every day, most of them from Venezuela. But some don't stay here for very long, as the city is busing migrants to other parts of the country, just like the governors of Texas, Florida, and Arizona. But here, there is coordination with the city of El Paso and cities like New York, where many are being sent. Now, yesterday I spoke with several Venezuelan migrants, including one who told me he's just grateful to have a place to go. Wherever they take you will be a blessing. If they take me to this place, that's my blessing. That's where God lets me go, that's where I can work, and that's where I can make a life. If God sends me over there, God will go open the doors for me and let me work, so I can work and help my mother and bring her. We often talk about the humanitarian crisis, which is what it is. But is this also a crisis for cities like El Paso?
Well, you know, we're all working together, and as you can see, we don't have them out on the street, which is really important. We find them shelter, we find them food, clothing.
Shelters are full.
Well, the shelters are full, and that's where we're working with the federal government to make sure that we can get decompressed and the help. And we've been getting a lot of help from the federal government. Our congresswoman, which I know you talked to earlier, has been very helpful for us to get that. We ended up getting yesterday, we got allocated $2 million from FEMA with a lot of help from her up front, so we can continue to do that. So it didn't cost El Paso taxpayers any money, but we continue to be able to do it and not affect what's going on in El Paso.
Secretary, I'm here in El Paso where about 2,000 people are arriving every day. This fiscal year, we're looking at roughly 2.4 million apprehensions. Countless others are crossing and not being apprehended. Secretary, what is the United States border policy?
Well, we are doing so much, Jose. You know what our policy is? Our policy is to enforce the law, and that is indeed what we are doing. Individuals who arrive at our border who do not have a legal basis to remain in the United States are being removed. And those that do have a valid basis under the laws that Congress has passed are able to stay as the law provides. That is our policy, to enforce immigration law.
How does it make you feel when you do that, when you're able to get people that have been 5, 6, 7 days out at sea in really difficult circumstances?
I'm sympathetic to the cause. I understand to a degree the magnitude of their destitution, if that's the right word. You know, economic struggles, there's zero infrastructure, all that stuff. I get it. I understand it. But I also understand that I have a job to do, and you know, I'm just simply enforcing immigration law, and my process is to take those people into custody, you know, give them an opportunity for asylum requests through the right avenues, make sure that their health and well-being is taken care of, and let the cards fall where they may.
Good morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. here in El Paso, the epicenter of the humanitarian crisis unfolding at our southern border. I'm Jose Diaz-Balart. Today was supposed to be the day the pandemic-era public health restriction, known as Title 42, was to be lifted. But the rules requiring the U.S. to turn away migrants seeking asylum are still in place after the Supreme Court put a temporary hold on a lower court ruling ordering them to be rescinded. We're very near the Greyhound bus station where there are folks who have been staying here overnight. Right now it's about 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Overnight it was far colder than that. I've got to tell you, there's so much movement. There are so many people coming through, but also going on to different parts of our country. The city has stepped up recently. We've seen, you know, all kinds of facilities set up out here. But I've got to tell you, there are men, women, and children who are here. It is their desire to seek asylum in the United States.
Last night, we were here, and there were still hundreds of people. 300 to 500 people were right in front of the National Guard, members of the National Guard here. They were burning fires to stay warm. They said they were going to stay until they'd be allowed, but obviously the temperatures here overnight, Jose, as you mentioned, they drop to the low 30s.
You worked in Uruguay, you trabajaste 3 years. ¿Trabajando para qué? Working 3.5 years in Uruguay so I could get enough money to make the journey to the United States. ¿Y cuál fue lo más difícil? What was the toughest part? Leaving Uruguay, 2 of June. Walking again, all the countries, Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, the Darien jungle, 6 days in the Darien, and then through Mexico, Costa Rica. Lo más difícil, the toughest part of that, lo más difícil de esta travesía fue lo último. Mexico was the most difficult. ¿En qué sentido? How? Everybody, they take everything from you. They take everything from you.
Just minutes ago, a group of individuals were allowed to walk in through one of the gates here at the border wall. Border Patrol was there. They opened the gate. They spoke to them momentarily, and then they walked in. I counted 15 to 16. I'm going to step aside so that you guys can see. So this is what's happening. Now, the images you're watching are less than a mile away from the area where we saw the hundreds or more than 1,000 at some point lining up at the border wall to be allowed in by Border Patrol. That area has since been shut down essentially by Texas state troopers and National Guard. They came in, they put in the concertina wire, and they asked migrants to leave the area. Initially, yesterday when we arrived, they were telling migrants that was an illegal entry point to the United States. They were asking them to go to a port of entry. Now, the migrants waited there till at some point late at night when we are told they were asked to move to a different place at the border wall. And so less than a mile away, we are here, no National Guard, no state troopers, only Border Patrol, and they are allowing small groups to go through this fence. In fact, you can see that the migrants are now organizing themselves, making sure that no one cuts in the line. Earlier, I counted between 300 to 400 migrants are here seeking asylum. So this is what's happening right now in Juarez. Yesterday, we were reporting that they were no longer being allowed. Today, we're seeing that some are still being allowed in to seek for asylum. Now, on the other side of the river, on the Mexican side, we have more migrants, a lot of them Venezuelan, telling us they are waiting to see if something changes with Title 42 to attempt crossing the river, Yasmin.
Wow, so many children, so few resources. It is only an indication of what is to come, it seems, as so many people are in flux there. Guad Venegas for us, thank you.
Yes, some were able to come in. As we know, Border Patrol is stretched here. Others are being stopped as the governor here, Governor Abbott, has put up barbed wire to stop more migrants from coming in. We're outside the Sacred Heart Church here in El Paso now. Some of these migrants here, they were able to come in, but they haven't seen the end of their hardships yet. In fact, a lot of women and children here spent the night outside the shelter because it reached capacity last night. Temperatures were in the 30s as all of these people were grabbing whatever food, clothing they could that was dropped off by local residents, trying to keep warm. We were here with them until pretty late. It was a hard thing to see, Andrea, and you can see some of these children are just toddlers and babies. They tried to take as many women and children inside as they could, but not everyone could make it inside. The city is really stretched thin. They're opening up more shelters this weekend, but for now, a lot of these people are looking at really cold temperatures, well below freezing coming in tonight, and it's questionable whether or not they'll have a place to sleep.
What about those who are still in Mexico? What are they doing right now as they wait and see if this is going to get lifted?
Yeah, that's interesting. We were in Reynosa, Mexico. That's a city just across from McAllen over the past 2 days, speaking to a church pastor there who runs a tent city, or he runs a shelter that has become a tent city over the last year, Senda de Vida. And Pastor Hector de Silva Luna told us that it's interesting. It really depends on who you speak to regarding the men, women, and children in the camp as to whether or not they're even aware of Title 42. I think there is an assumption to some degree that those coming up to seek a better life here are very keyed in to immigration policy. And I ask him, do people come up to you asking, what's the status of Title 42? He says there's a significant amount of people that don't even know what Title 42 is. They're simply trying to get to a better place, a safe place, potentially to reconnect with family who's already here in America. And so I think that's an important distinction as well. As for the numbers that they're trying to take care of at his shelter there in Reynosa, he says that over the past year, it has quadrupled in size. The largest groups being those from Nicaragua, from Haiti, and from Venezuela. Katie?
It's just so hard to see those kids outside there in the cold with nowhere to go. Morgan Chesky, Morgan, thank you very much.